there, I'm Tom Field. I'm Senior Vice President of Editorial with Information Security Media Group. Delighted to welcome you to our webinar today. The topic, ransomware in the cloud, challenges and security best practices. Your presenter today is Nick Harrihill. He's Director of Support with Spin.AI. Before I bring Nick onto our screen, let me give you some background on our topic today. The rise of SaaS ransomware is becoming an alarming issue as it poses unique challenges and risks to businesses that rely on cloud-based data storage and management solutions. In this session today, we'll explore the intricacies of ransomware attacker tactics within the SaaS ecosystem. We'll also discuss why traditional backup and disaster recovery methods need to adapt in response to the ransomware threat, and why organizations should explore innovative approaches and solutions to fortify their data protection. A little bit of background on my organization. Information Security Media Group is a global education and intelligence firm. We're headquartered in the U.S. in Princeton, New Jersey, and you may know us by any one of our 36 media properties. These include Bank Info Security, Gov Info Security, and Data Breach Today. In all, we reach an audience of over 1.3 million security and technology leaders globally. We give them a daily diet of news, analysis, research, events, and educational programs just like this one. A few notes of housekeeping. One, if you have any questions for Nick, you can submit them anytime by the chat window on your screen. I likely can't get to every question today, but for those questions we don't answer within the course of this session, we'll get responses back to you via email. Should you encounter any technical issues during this webinar, please take down the email address you see on your screen now. If you write to webinars@ismg.io, we've got support staff ready to get back to you immediately. Also, today's webinar is copyrighted material meant for today's session and individual study purposes only. If you'd like to use any of the information presented today, or if you're looking for customized training materials, please contact us. Delighted to introduce our sponsor today, Spin.AI. Spin.AI is a SaaS security company protecting enterprises against the risk of shadow IT, data leak, and loss, ransomware, and non-compliance. Spin1, the all-in-one SaaS security platform for mission-critical SaaS apps, protects SaaS data for Google Workspace, Microsoft 365, Salesforce, and Slack. Spin1 provides SaaS security, posture management, SaaS DLP, and SaaS ransomware protection for more than 1,600 organizations worldwide to reduce downtime and recovery costs and save time for SecOps teams. To learn more, please visit Spin.AI. And I'm thrilled to have Nick Harrihill with us today. He's an experienced cybersecurity and business leader who is Director of Support at Spin.AI. His industry experience includes leading security teams at enterprise companies, as well as building programs, processes, and operations at cybersecurity startups. With that, let's bring on to our virtual stage here, Nick Harrihill. Nick, thanks so much for being a part of this discussion today.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Tom. Thank you.
Nick, we have talked a lot about ransomware over the past several years. What's unique about ransomware in SaaS environments?
Yeah, so a couple of things related specifically to SaaS environments is, number one, I would say it provides an expanded attack surface for adversaries. So, obviously adversaries are going to go where the data is, and most companies are utilizing a variety of SaaS applications, including extremely critical ones like Google Workspace or Microsoft 365 that are critical to their business functions. So since that's where the data is, that's what adversaries are going to attack. And at the same time, with that expanded attack surface, you can reach your SaaS environment from anywhere you have an internet connection, which adds to that risk. Additionally, and what's inherent to these SaaS environments is that it promotes collaboration and data sharing. It makes our lives easier working within our businesses, that we can collaborate and share things. But from a risk perspective, when it comes to ransomware, multiple users often have shared access to files and documents. And if one user's account is compromised, that ransomware can spread throughout the SaaS environment. And then one last thing I would note that is provides a risk to the SaaS environment, and that is a bit unique to that, are the proliferation of integrations and third-party apps. So within our SaaS applications, going back to those examples of Google Workspace and Microsoft 365, end users are plugging in different applications and extensions. And if one of those becomes compromised, it could become the vector for a ransomware attack.
Yeah, talk about those adversaries. How specifically are they taking advantage of these environments, and what are some of the trends that you are particularly tracking now?
Yeah, I'll note a few recent trends that I thought were interesting is one is targeting weekly secured administrator accounts. So these are administrators that are overlooking and administering your SaaS environment. And in a case where they don't have proper controls in place when it comes to authentication and other controls, they become the target for these adversaries. So that's why something like posture management becomes very critical. Additionally, another trend, which is more around evading detection, it's very similar to what we've known of in the industry for advanced persistent threats, where they practice what's called a low and slow method of gaining foothold within an enterprise, where they do that to evade detection, but slowly spread throughout the environment. We're finding some similar indications with ransomware, where they may evade detection by encrypting a small percentage of files, targeted files, things like that, where it becomes harder to detect over time. And then the last thing is targeting mobile devices. So mobile devices become an extension of your SaaS environment. And with that, kind of, again, noting the expanded attack surface, with those mobile devices, they become a target for attacks, which could affect both the data stored on that device and anything that it is syncing to the SaaS environment.
Nick, I wonder if you can take us behind the scenes a bit and describe how ransomware actually infiltrates and spreads within SaaS environments.
Sure, and I will talk through a traditional example, which we have a graphic for here, where we'll talk about the common infiltration method, which most folks are going to be aware of with phishing emails. So in this case, a user receives a phishing email, becomes compromised, where the ransomware virus automatically spreads to the computer. At that point, all files on the computer are encrypted, including items within their Google Drive. Now, in this case, referring to a Google Workspace example, many users will have active file sync going on from their end device to the Google G Suite cloud. And in that case, that synchronization is actually going to spread that ransomware attack, where files within Google Drive are replaced with their infected versions. So within those steps, I've talked about how it infiltrates and spreads. I'd also like to talk about typical ways that we respond to an attack like that. So it's very imperative that you have some type of automated detection going on. Where at Spin, we're looking at both known ransomware signatures as well as performing file behavior monitoring. So it's not just important that you're looking at known signatures, but looking at behaviors that are indicative of a ransomware attack, which could be mass encryption of files, replacement of files, or deletion of files, and done so in a way that doesn't mimic typical human behavior. So your very first step is finding that source, which in my example was a local to cloud example. End user device is compromised, syncs to the cloud. You could also have a cloud to cloud example, where one of those integrations or applications within your SaaS environment becomes the attack vector. In either of those two examples, the most important first step is detecting and revoking access of whatever that compromised source is. And after that, it's very important to also have automation when it comes to both identifying impacted files, as well as automatically restoring that back to the user in production. So we want to automatically detect those, automatically restore those files, and do so in a way that limits the end user downtime.
I'm inferring from this that traditional defenses, by which I'm thinking backups, just aren't effective.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And there's a few metrics that I found recently. about both backups as well as time to restore the data. So first off, with backups, an interesting metric is that although 92% of businesses reporting having backups, more than 1 in 4 businesses fail to restore data from them during a ransomware attack. So that really emphasizes the need to regularly test these processes, the efficacy of both making sure that your backups are in place, that it's backing up data as it should, as frequently as it should, but secondly, testing your restore process, which leads me to the second metric around average downtime, even for those companies that have backups in place, is around 3 weeks. And a reason for that is you may have your backups in place, but you have to consider the time it takes to restore that data. And one of the things that could impede that are API limits that are associated with your provider that is backing up your data. So you as a business need to take that into account, because obviously you want to minimize that downtime for the impact it has on your business if, for instance, your critical files are not available to your end users.
So Nick, given what you've shared, what are some proven strategies and best practices to defend one's SaaS environment, one's SaaS data from ransomware in particular?
Sure, and like most defenses within cybersecurity, it's going to be a mix of things. I'll talk about both some administrative as well as technical measures. From an administrative perspective, number one is collaborating with your SaaS provider, making sure that you have a good understanding of the security measures they have in place, SLAs, as well as where their responsibilities end and yours begin. So you want to have a tight collaboration and understanding there. Secondly, from an administrative perspective, is developing an incident response plan. So making sure that all of the key players in place know what their responsibilities are, you execute against those responsibilities, have automation and other processes in place. But most importantly, that you regularly test this, tabletop exercises, other things like that, to make sure that your plan is current and effective. But then additionally, from an administrative perspective, just the regular security training and awareness for your end users when it comes to phishing, social engineering, how to manage data within the cloud, all those different types of things. From a technical perspective, a lot of these are going to be examples of typical good tech hygiene practices that we do to limit security risks. So going back to posture management, making sure that we have MFA in place for our administrators, robust access controls, logging, regularly updating and patching software, as well as, we've talked about backing up data, but having tools in place to automatically detect attacks. And then with all of these control measures in place, just like it's important to test our incident response plan, it's important to test our processes, testing our backups, doing penetration testing within our cloud environment, and of course, going through regularly security audits to test those.
Nick, what can you share about recovery methods and resilience building to mitigate the impact of a ransomware incident on SaaS data? You can't afford downtime.
Yeah, sure. And, I've talked a lot about the preventative measures, at least to mitigate some of those impacts, backups, automated detection of attacks, posture management. But, in the case that you should experience a ransomware attack, making sure that you're executing against that incident response plan. So that's ensuring that your steps for containment, communication, data restoration, all those legal and regulatory compliance measures are in place. But also making sure that you segment and provide some isolation within the environment. So you're isolating affected systems so that you're preventing the malware from moving laterally across your environment, but then also making sure that you're getting guidance from security and law enforcement experts so they can provide valuable guidance and support during the recovery process. But then, of course, as a contingency, it's always good to have, insurance in place. And there are various cybersecurity insurance policies out there that specifically cover ransomware type incidents.
What does it take a blend of human as well as technical solutions to really build a solid defense and response plan?
Yeah, so from the human and automation side, they have to work in concert together. And I'll start with the human side. We talked about training, phishing simulations, all those different things to make sure that our people are at the ready for when one of these attacks occurs. Having the response plan in place that you're also regularly testing. But then from the automation side, automated backups. This isn't something that you want to do without automation in place, because you could obviously have the risk of losing critical data. Automation in place when it comes to detection, as well as restoring files should you have a ransomware attack. All of this should be done automatically so that you automatically stop the spread, as well as reduce the time to restore those files back to production. But then I'd also note just posture management, automation around, I talked about earlier about administrators that are targets for attacks. We want to make sure that configurations that they have in place are automatically tested so that we know that within the SaaS environment, those critical configurations that you can line up with different control standards like a NIST, for instance, that you're utilizing best practices, but also using posture management and risk assessment when it comes to these applications and extensions you're plugging into your environment. So you don't want humans having to go through all of this themselves with checklists. You want automation in place so that you can automatically detect these things that can become risks to your environment.
You used the word automation quite a bit there. What role does automation play? How would you describe it?
Yeah, I would say that the main role for automation is going to be, a good example, and I talked about earlier about our example of a ransomware attack. And automation is going to play a role in detection, doing that, monitoring to find not just known signatures of ransomware attacks, but behavior that mimics that, which is very difficult for a human to do on their own. So you want to have automation in place and AI to find these different types of attacks. But secondly, with that, once we found that attack, we want to use our automation to identify impacted files and users so that we can restore all of those back. And then lastly, going back to the posture management example, making sure that we're utilizing automation to detect configurations that have become out of sync with those control standards, as well as posture management around those applications that may flag different types of risk for your environment.
Nick, let's bring it back to Spin. How are you helping customers prepare for ransomware in SaaS environments?
Yeah, great question. So number one, we are providing backups for our customers, up to 3 times per day, so that we regularly have those files backed up in the case of not just the case of a ransomware attack, but in case that they lose files from their local SaaS environment, they can easily restore those. But in case of a ransomware attack, we are doing that automated AI detection and response. So everything I described in my example earlier, from detection to finding the impacted files to restoring those back to the user, we have a 2-hour SLA around all of those processes, from that detection to ultimately restoring those back to our end users so they can get back to production. And then lastly, posture management. So utilizing our AI, we're looking at configurations within the SaaS environment. We're looking at integrations within the SaaS environment as well, so that on a real-time basis, we can flag different types of risks to the environment so that our end customers can either respond to those in automated fashion or go in and take a look at these risks that we flagged.
Terrific topic. You've offered some excellent insight. Where can our attendees go to get even more information?
Yes, so you can go to Spin.AI, where we have some interesting resources, including a ransomware tracker, so that you can look at most recent ransomware events and how those events occurred, and some detail on numbers and impacts, as well as we have a downtime calculator. So you can plug in the amount of data that you have so that you can calculate typical time to restore and other interesting costs and things like that.
Nick, thank you so much for taking time to share your insights today and for answering my questions as well.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Enjoyed the conversation.
I did also. Of course, I want to thank our attendees. You took time out of your day to attend this session. We're grateful for that. And I do trust that today's discussion provided some excellent new insights and data points to enable you and your organization to be even better prepared to tackle ransomware and SaaS environments. I look forward to seeing you again at one of our upcoming events. And until then, for Information Security Media Group, I'm Tom Field. Thank you for giving us your time and your attention today.